Welcome to this video. We are going to learn how to use Excel to perform some graphical analysis, and the example we have is data from Usain Bolt's famous run. So the first thing we have to do, we've got all this data. There are various positions and the times at which these runners achieved those positions. And here we have over here Mr. Bolt. So the first thing we have to do is calculate for each one of these rows the displacement at that time or that moment. Now before you start, you can't have any displacement, so we'll just put a 0 right there. The next thing we're going to do is calculate this value minus this value. Now I could go and type the value 10, which is the answer. Or I could have Excel calculate this for me. Whenever I want Excel to perform a calculation, I have to tell it, hey, here comes an equation. So you hit equals. That's the indication to Excel that you're about to type in an equation. And then instead of typing 10 minus 0, here's a fancy trick. You can click on the cell containing 10, and you do minus, then you click the cell containing 0, and you hit enter. Now, why did I go to this trouble of clicking on the cells instead of typing out numbers? Because now I don't have to go say equals this minus this, and then in the next cell I don't have to do this minus this. There is a shortcut. I can simply click this corner box. See this box right here? I click it and I drag down and I let go, and that formula has been copied for every subsequent cell. And when I copy the formula down, the two cells that we refer to, the references as we call them, they move down as well with the copy action. Okay, next up we have to calculate the split times, or as we've called it, the delta t. How much time has passed from here to here? How much time has passed from here to here? How about here to here? Now, it was easy when we looked at displacement. The values were all going to be 10. But these are going to be different, so our formula will really come in handy. Again, how do we tell Excel that we're going to do an equation? You hit equals. Then you click the cells that you want to use in the formula. So I click on this. I want to take the difference between this and the preceding time. When I'm finished, you hit enter. Then I can just copy this formula down. I click and drag the corner box all the way to the bottom and I let go. And when I click in, it's taking the difference between these two. Down in this cell, it's taking the difference between these two. Now we can find the velocities. This velocity will tell us, was Usain Bolt speeding up, slowing down? How did his speed change over the course of his run? So you might have a prediction about what this data should look like. Did he speed up? Did he slow down? Did he get faster at the end? But it's interesting to be able to see this in a graph. Velocity is displacement over time. But which displacement and which time should we use? This displacement from 0 to 10 occurred during this interval of time, between 0 and 1.89. So you need this displacement divided by the corresponding interval of time. And likewise, this displacement occurred from 1.89 to 2.96. And right here, that's the difference between those values of time. So I do the displacement divided by the corresponding interval of time. But I don't have to type that formula again the way that I just did. Instead, I can click this corner box, get the right for the solid cross icon, click, drag down. Next, I can add some graphs. To add our graphs, we'll need to hit the Insert tab. Click your mouse over to a cell that doesn't contain any data. You hit Insert, you click under Charts, this one with the dots, that's for scatter, and then you choose the scatter chart, the scatter plot with no connecting lines. We do not want connecting lines. Now, most likely, it's going to be totally empty like this. That's exactly what we want. If you have a bunch of random stuff in here, that's okay too. Right-click on the graph and hit Select Data about halfway down. we need to add an XY set. They call it a series in Excel. So let's click the Add button. Now I have a place to input my X values and my Y values. I have to do cancel for a second here because my graph is covering up the data. I right-click, right-click, select data, add. What are the X values that I want? I want to see the time on the X-axis, not the interval of time, because that will be shown between tick marks on the graph. I just want to see the raw times. How has time progressed? And then I go into the Y values, I highlight the equals 1, I delete or backspace. Now, one of the things we're going to be doing is a velocity graph. You'll also be doing a position graph. But we'll start with the velocity graph. So I click right here, I click in the middle of the 0, and I click and drag all the way to the bottom. And then I hit OK. I've got my series here, it shows up now. I hit OK once more. Here is my velocity graph. Now we need to add some chart titles and some axis titles. Whose data is this? This is Carl Lewis. Oops, Carol Lewis. Carl Lewis. So we've got Carl Lewis up top. Next we need to add axis labels so that people know what's on the Y and X axis. So to do that, you click on your graph, you hit this green plus, and then the second box down, you click Axis Titles. Then you click once to highlight the axis title, again to enter the text. And I'm going to delete this and say what was on the x-axis? It was time in seconds. Always put your units in parentheses after the variable. Then I click on the y-axis title, I click again to enter the text. And I'm going to change this to velocity. What's the unit for velocity? Meters per second. You are going to be creating a velocity graph and a position graph for each of these runners. So you're going to have a lot of graphs. You'll need to move them down, maybe move them down below over here, find some extra space. You can put the 2 down below, and then for Mo Green, you can put Mo's 2 graphs down below, and proceed like this.